Disclaimer: I played Blasphemous on the Xbox Series X and will talk about it in the context of me doing so. Any performance or glitch issues may differ for others. I will try and indicate when I'm talking about spoilers, but the footage may have spoilers within it, so I apologize. Blasphemous can be described as a Metroidvania action-adventure game with semi-Souls-like elements. This genre was popularized by games such as Hollow Knight, which was praised for its challenging difficulty and unique aesthetic. With Blasphemous, the Souls-like elements don't just stop at its difficulty. We can see the influence from Software's titles across numerous aspects of the game, which I will go into detail. Blasphemous was created by the Spanish studio Game Kitchen and published by Team 17. It was released on the Nintendo Switch, PC, PS4, Xbox One, and September 10th, 2019. In Blasphemous, you play as the Penitent One in a land called Custodia. You are part of the Brotherhood of Silent Sorrow and the last member of the Order. Resurrected by the miracle, you go on a pilgrimage. To be honest with you, I don't feel qualified enough to give you a full analysis and breakdown of the story and all of its characters, because others have already done so much better than I can. I would recommend the likes of the Inhuman One and Gingy if you are looking for that type of analysis. Links to their videos are in the description. What I will say is what I did enjoy, what I understood from the story. Obviously a game called Blasphemous is going to have some deep religious themes. I did find it difficult to understand at some points than something like a Dark Souls, but that might be because of my lack of investment coming into the story compared to a franchise like the Dark Souls or the Soulsborne franchise, which are some of my favorite games of all time. The perfect metaphor for this kind of Souls-like storytelling is the shattered mirror. The mirror starts as a perfect telling of the story, then it's shattered into pieces. Each piece can be seen as a different item entry, NPC dialogue, different cutscene, and the game asks the player to figure out the original meaning. There are multiple endings for this game. I ultimately got ending B. The general graphic style for Blasphemous, as you can see, is a pixel art 16-bit style with cutscenes at certain points that are animated in a 2D animated style. I would describe the world of Custodia as a dark fantasy, perhaps even gothic fantasy world with heavy religious themes. It has very much reminded me of From Software's games worlds, such as the Soul series in a way, not just in aesthetic, but in the general dark, cruel feel of the world, seeing bloodied NPCs in pixel art or giant impaled figures in the background, for example. There's a vast array of different biomes or levels that have unique feels, from Mercy Dreams to Albero to the Graveyard of the Peaks to Jondo, amongst others. Each really have their own feel, challenges and secrets to find. I personally enjoyed the aesthetic. As a fan of these types of games, to be honest, it's another thing that made me gravitate towards them over something like a Hollow Knight. No dislike or hate towards Hollow Knight, by the way. I enjoyed it from what I played, but I much prefer this style of game. The world, similarly to Dark Souls, is heavily interconnected. There were locked gates where I saw 1 hour in, which only opened halfway through the game, for example, or nearing the end of it sometimes. It's kind of circular, non-linear level design where you circle back to areas you've already been for is something I personally enjoy. Is one of the reasons I rate Dark Souls 1 highly amongst its other entries in the Soulsborne series. And what I was really glad to see was Blasphemous had implemented some kind of similar style. As previously stated, this game has Metroidvania elements. There are platforming aspects and combat that I will get into deeper in those specific sections. The Souls-like elements really show through the gameplay. When you kill an enemy, you collect Tears of Atonement, which can be spent in various ways, such as increasing the Penitent One's set of attacks, or buying items at Candelaras, or going to the Confessor statues and getting rid of your guilt. An interesting change from the usual Souls-like formula, which honestly feels welcome here, is the fact that you don't lose your Tears of Atonement when you die, which is typical of the Souls-like genre to punish the player in such a way. Your fervor, however, is limited. Fervor is used to cast prayers, which can be thought as spells, and it can be thought of as a mana or magic point resource in a sense. And the more you die, the more of your fervor is limited. This can be thought of as a similar mechanic to the Dark Souls 2 limiting of the health, but in my opinion it's executed better here, where in Dark Souls 2 you would have to use a human effigy, which I personally didn't like when it was done there. But another distinct aspect of as different from the Souls series is when you die, there are separate collection points or blood stains in a way to unlock that limited fervor again. In the Souls-like genre, you typically only get one body or blood stain on the ground when you die, and if you die again, you lose all of your souls or whatever it is depending on the game. Well, in this game you don't lose your souls, and when you die twice, there's two different bloodstains in a way, or souls, or whatever you want to call them. There is a way, as I previously stated, to use your Tears of Atonement to get rid of all your guilt or limited further using the Statue of the Confessors. The customization in the game is not enough for me to call it an RPG, but there are a lot of options in terms of prayers, rosary beads that you can use to affect your stats. There are mea culpa hearts that can affect the way you play, such as making you do more damage with low health, or making you not be able to use bile flasks, but increases your Tears of Atonement you get, or getting rid of a bar further that increases your prayers damage. This type of customization I feel is good and made me feel like I could define my type of playstyle, and that it could really be slightly different than other people's. When it came to the side content in the game, I did try to engage with it, but I didn't really get gripped by any of it. Unless I missed something, a lot of it for me was just game-wide quests that you just have to find a collection of items over a variety of different levels or sections of the map and get a reward at the end of that. And for me, that felt quite tedious, and I don't really like that type of side quests in the game, so I didn't really get to see the conclusion of a lot of these side quests that lasted throughout the whole game. An aspect that might seem simple at first, but for me was very well executed, was the idea of the relics. Relics are items that the player obtains that alters the perception of the world around them. Now this means that previously inaccessible parts of the map that were blocked off due to environmental hazards can now be accessed due to the player having a relic equipped. Now for me, going into this blind, there were sections of the game that I couldn't get to, and I kept that in mind during my playthrough. Now when I got that relic and I saw some significance or wording that made it obvious to where this was supposed to be used in that situation, like for example the immune to poisonous gas relic, I remember those sections with that poisonous gas and I knew to return to them. Some relics aren't as impactful as that, but I do like that kind of gameplay, and it adds to the interconnectedness I was talking about earlier. When it comes to the combat, I feel it was very fluid and snappy, but limited at the start of the game, as you don't have your full kit, which needs to be unlocked using Tears of Atonement at mea culpa altars scattered throughout the game. The different upgrades can be categorized as going into one of 5 trees. The range tree, the charge tree, the combo tree, the vertical tree, and the lunge tree. They all sound as they are. The combo tree unlocks different combos, such as an up 3-hit combo and a down 3-hit combo. The range tree allows the penitent one to do ranged attacks like fervorous blood, and the lunge tree allows for you to have a dodge lunge attack. You also have a block as a means of defense. Also a parry, which occurs when you block an enemy's attack at the right time. Parries can allow for you to do executions or maybe stun certain enemies and even bosses for a little bit, so you can get in some extra damage. Prayers in this game can be thought of as spells, as previously stated. There's a decent variety of prayers to choose from simple AoE damage prayers to prayers that increase your attack speed. Another aspect is your fervor bar changes depending on which prayers you have. For example, More demanding prayers means you may only have 3 bars of charge when you have full fervor. But if you change it to the one that only has attack speed, you'll have a lot more bars before your fervor is out. When it comes to the enemy variety and the bosses in the game, there are a variety of different enemy types, some annoying, some fun, some easy, some hard. But at the end of the day, I feel like each enemy was unique and wasn't just a reskin of another enemy. Each brought something unique to the table. In terms of boss fights, for a game of this size, there's a decent number of boss fights, and a lot of them are pretty good in my opinion. Not to get too deep into the spoilers, but each boss in my opinion had a unique feel to them, and in some cases felt like puzzles, more like Demon Souls than Dark Souls. More like a puzzle to be solved, less of a boss just attacking you and having some mechanics attached. Overall, I prefer the smaller enemy type bosses over the giant bosses that cover the whole boss arena. I really just like that stand under and hit type of gameplay, or just standing in the right place at the right time and just hitting a floating bosses, and this game did kind of inspire me to get into a habit of doing that. I didn't like the last boss fight as I felt it had a lot of RNG and wasn't really fun for me to do. I liked the boss fights more towards the middle of the game, going towards the end. I didn't really enjoy the last one, and particularly the second part of the last boss. The summons, in a sense, like the Soul series, which you can call on, but in my experience they didn't really do anything but heal me when I was struggling. I felt the areas in the game were a lot of the challenge due to certain enemies and environmental puzzles, during the beginning of the game especially. However, around the late to mid point of the game, with the optional bosses and the final 3 bosses in particular, I felt there was a more drastic increase in difficulty, especially with the optional boss fights. Platforming in the game was a divisive thing for me to think about. While I enjoyed some of the fast-paced jumping sections and I enjoyed the time challenges that they offered, I really disliked the jumping sections in the game where an enemy is allowed to shoot at you, trying to platform, rendering you basically helpless. The Graveyard of the Peaks is a particularly grueling section because of this, especially the floating enemies which shoot at you and zoom into you and knock you down and not really allowing you to do anything. Apart from that kind of stuff, and at some points the enemy placement being a bit off in terms of where you're supposed to platform and enemies surrounding you and crowding around you and hitting you until you die, the platforming in my eyes was well done, and I'm not really someone who enjoys platforming that much. I found it enjoyable in my opinion. A quick note about the sound, voice acting and music. The sound design and the impactfulness of the attacks, especially the gory and viscera of the execution attacks, was really enhanced by the audio. The music really helped set a tone for the game. The ambience and the atmosphere presented by the music felt very religious and followed that kind of motif or theme, and added to the visual representation of what I was seeing. The voice acting in the game was also pretty okay in my opinion. It was on the level of like a Dark Souls or an Elden Ring. It wasn't an amazing standout performance type of thing, but it wasn't bad or awful in any way. It was pretty good actually, considering this is an indie studio. In most cases, we don't really see a lot of voice acting in these games anyway. So seeing basically all of the NPCs voice acted to a good standard is actually a great thing. In my opinion, Blasphemous is an incredible experience for the price point asked for, or even if you decide to pick it up on PS Plus, which is available at the time of writing. I believe if you're a fan of Hollow Knight or the Soulsborne titles, then you'll find that this will be your kind of game and you'll enjoy it a lot. It took me around 15 hours to beat the game and get ending B, which is the bad ending. I did do some of the side content. From a rough estimate, if you were to do all the side quests, it'll probably be an 18 to 21 hour experience, depending on your aptitude for this kind of game. To summarize the pros and cons in my eyes, pros of this game are great atmosphere and lore, good challenging boss fights, good music and sound design in my eyes, and exceptional world and area design. The bad points or the cons would be some annoying enemy types. Platforming can be annoying with flying enemies.
overall base story, in my opinion, was kind of hard to follow, and combat at the beginning especially can be a bit repetitive. Now when it comes to score, I'd give it, a quick disclaimer is that I'll only give a game a score in its review if it's a part of an ongoing franchise or something to be compared with. Fortunately, Blasphemous has Blasphemous 2. Now, I haven't played Blasphemous 2 yet, but I'd give Blasphemous 1 an 8.2, depending on what the sequel does. I feel there is some weak points to the game that can be improved on. Anyway, thank you for watching. That's it I had for my review. If you enjoyed, it would do me a huge favor if you left a like and subscribed. Leave any suggestions on what I could do better in my reviews and what games you would like to see me review next. Anyway, again, and thank you for watching. See you in the next video.